and welcome to Voice with Julia and day 26 of our 30 days of breath support. Today we're going to be talking more extensively about releasing the breath at the end of the phrase. But first, I want to invite all classical singers in the audience to check out our Lucca Bel Canto Institute, which is happening this summer in Lucca, Italy from September 9th through 16th. All that information is below, so we suggest if you're interested, please apply early as we do have a few scholarships available.
Voice with Julia, change your voice, change your life.
Now, we talked earlier about onsets and releases, and I did discuss how we release our breath in the phrase, but I think we need to go back to that conversation now that we've dealt with a lot of these other elements of our breathing, because this is such a crucial element to gaining that freedom of our breath system, especially as we're singing during long arias or long operas or even long phrases. So essentially what a release is a reset of our musculature so that we're not holding and tightening. So if you can observe me right now, okay, if I'm singing, a full release would be release, right? So this drop. So we don't allow any tension to be here. Now here's where the misunderstanding happens, because we need to maintain our appoggio, our inhalatory preparation. So that is actually up here, right? So we have to learn to do two different things at once. And this is not really natural, okay? It's not natural in the sense of how we live our life. Now, it should become natural as a singer, but it actually isn't a natural gesture. So if you noticed in my demonstration of release, I let my ribs go. I let that happen as this release. We have to learn to keep this general idea of up and out, okay? And this is not stuck out. Please refer back to my video about not making tension in the body. This isn't about pushing out our rib cage drastically, right? This is about creating this sense of buoyancy. So when we release, this has to learn to release while this stays out. Now, if you notice, if I do that, this release is smaller, but the muscular release is still there, meaning I am still feeling that the muscles don't hold anymore, that they release, okay? So we have to train our bodies when we release to keep the appoggio, especially if we're going all the way through in an aria, right? It's different if you have time on stage where you have maybe even 10 seconds between phrases. But if you have less than that, if you're singing and you're singing phrase after phrase after phrase with maybe at the most 2 or 3 seconds between, you've got to learn how to maintain your appoggio, which is this expansion, this feeling of buoyancy up here in the body, okay? So we have to be able to train our body to release down here in the pelvic floor and the lower abdominals. See, I've released, but it doesn't look as drastic as when I was showing you this version, because I've dropped and I'm essentially pushing out my viscera down and out, which we don't want to do. So we maintain this and then we release here. We release, okay? And you can practice, stay up, and I want you to squeeze the pelvic floor muscles, squeeze the kegels, yes, okay? And then allow these lower abdominals to come in and then release, okay? In, release, and you'll start to see, you may even feel a little bit of your butt muscles get involved in this, and that's okay, but you'll see what happens, okay? It's a very slight movement, but there still is release. Now, if we want to add even more feeling of release, we can add the tilt of the sacrum right here, okay? So when we inhale, we tuck a little bit, right? And then we release out. Here, release. Here, release. So you feel this little motion of the tailbone. When we release, we relax the tailbone just a little bit. When we engage in the phrase, we're back here. Then we release. Then we're here. Then we release, okay? So let's say we're singing a line. We're going to sing Caro mio ben, as we always do. We'll sing Caro mio ben, then we'll breathe, and we'll sing Credimi al men. Now you need to practice fully releasing that musculature in a simple phrase. If you can't do that, you want to work on that, right? Until that becomes natural. So if we sing, release. Release. Yeah? So that's where the work is. That's what you've got to practice, is keeping this up and out while this is doing the work, okay? But you have to be really honest with yourself. So if you're not certain if these muscles are fully releasing, that's job number one, right? You got to make sure that these muscles really are able to do that. Job number two is, while these muscles are releasing, you've got to stay buoyant and up and out here. Now that doesn't mean pressured. So for any of you that are like, keeping this out, not right. Sorry, if it's really tense, it's just not right. Okay, so just check that. So those are your two jobs, and that's where the work is. So now that we've built all of this knowledge about how we're using our body, we have to revisit this release, because a not full release in between phrases can create tension, and it's kind of what we call getting stacked in our breath cycle, okay? Because we're not releasing the breath appropriately. So the other element of a good release is the fact that we are not inhaling too much air at the beginning of the phrase, right? That we're allowing the appoggio and the openness of the jaw to be the regulation of how much air we are taking in. So essentially, if we are looking at, like, from a physics perspective, atoms on the outside versus atoms on the inside, they're going to remain somewhat similar. We're not overpressurizing this. We don't want to go, and then what happens is the glottis closes to keep the pressure balance higher in here than it is out here. We don't want that. We want to maintain an open throat so that the pressure balance is equal, okay? And this is important because we can't get a buildup of pressure inside the lungs, because that's going to cause us to clench and not be able to fully release, okay? So practice with this ideology a little bit, and I will see you tomorrow, and we're going to talk about high notes tomorrow. So make sure you learn this before you go on to tomorrow. I'll see you soon.